My name's Jane Scott. I live in the Margaret River area and am passionate about walking in the area and the beautiful wildflowers and plants that we have here. I've been very involved with the Cape to Cape track, and with the wildflowers with two colleagues, Cape to Cape Publishing, we've done some books on the natural history of this area.
And you'll take us through the books?
We will now look at some of the books. These are some of the books that we've done with Cape to Cape Publishing, which is myself, Patricia Negus and Ray Former. I'm very involved with the Cape to Cape track, so this is the guidebook for the track, which we've done and keep updated regularly. And then my other passion is wildflowers in the Capes area, and with Patricia Negus we did a big book on the wildflowers of just part of the Margaret River Shire, and then especially connected with the Cape to Cape track. Find That Flower is more of a photographic reference to the wildflowers along the Cape to Cape and in the general area. And then because we have so many orchids in this area, this part of the world, I also was wanting to do a small book on the orchids of Margaret River and the Capes area. We have a few other books as well, but these are just some. Cape to Cape track guidebook purpose is to take people as they're walking, give them a description of the track with maps accompanying and photographs, and be quite a detailed guide to the whole walk. The Cape to Cape walk is 135 kilometres all along the coastline of the very southwest tip of Australia, from the lighthouse up at Cape Leeuwin, Cape Naturalist, down to Cape Leeuwin. And the track itself goes along cliff tops, along beaches, with some nice inland loops as well into the Baranop forest down here. So it's a very varied walk, and just has a lot of different elements. It's rather lovely walking along the coast. From the cliff tops you can often see whales, dolphins, and of course there are a multitude of wildflowers all the way along in spring. And
of course offshore there's the Leeuwin Current as well,
there is the Leeuwin Current, yes, absolutely. Which is actually really interesting because in the marine environment there are a lot of species that come down here because of the warm current that you wouldn't normally see this far south. At the northern end of the Cape to Cape track is Cape Naturalist. It's quite a high plateau with the lighthouse on the top, of course, and the walk starts from there. The lighthouse is a lovely one which you can climb. It's only a shortish distance, but again a lovely view from the top. And then the first little part of the Cape to Cape track, the first 3.5 kilometres, is actually wheelchair accessible. It's a beautiful bit of coastline, lovely views, looking down to Sugarloaf Rock, and we have boardwalk and bitumen along there so that people of all abilities can use it. The rest of the track is a bit different. Most of it is rough, stony, sandy and beach, cliff tops, different kind of walk. But it's a beautiful section going down to Sugarloaf Rock here. This is an example of how the book works. For each section of the track we have a map, a short description, and where we can some photographs too, to give people more of an idea of the country they're passing through. So the scale of the maps is 1 in 25,000, so it's very detailed, and we have little sections on the access water facilities in each place, and then just a step-by-step description. with a little bit, it is described north to south, and of course some people walk south to north, so we do have some little extra paragraphs just to highlight what happens when you walk the other way.
And this section is the Margaret River, of course.
This section is the Margaret River, which is very central. Here's the river mouth. Doesn't always look like this. Sometimes in the winter the river is flowing very fast through the mouth, and it goes through to the ocean at different places. It's one of those rivers which starts in the Blackwood Plateau over towards Nannup and flows right through to the coast. It's one of the few rivers systems in the southwest which is in a pretty good state, not too affected by salinity, and has some very good vegetation up a lot of its length, which is lovely. It flows through in the winter, but in the summer there is a sandbar. We have very little rain through the summer months here, and starts flowing again usually in about June. And when it is flowing through the winter, if we're having a good winter rainfall, it can be quite deep. It can be chest deep and quite difficult to cross sometimes. But through the summer, of course, everything is easy with the sandbars. At the southern end of the capes, we have Cape Leeuwin with the lighthouse down here, and the walk ending at the water wheel. It's ended at the water wheel for a long time, but we now have a little bit of extra track through to the car park at the lighthouse itself, so it finishes there now. This, of course, is where the Leeuwin Current comes right around and into the Australian Bight eventually. But the walk goes along the cliff tops here and back down, and there's some very pretty little bays. Quarry Bay, where there's a beautiful tufa cliff, which I may have a photograph of. Yes, here. This is an interesting little bit of the coastline here, with the tufa cliff above the granite basement rocks.
What's tufa?
Tufa is a deposit from the seepage from springs coming out of the hillside.
And you have the lighthouse, of course.
And the lighthouse is tall, the Cape Leeuwin Lighthouse. Very lovely to climb and get a beautiful 360-degree view at the top of the Indian Ocean and the Southern Ocean.
And you can get in there?
And yes, absolutely, yeah. It's a super place to go. And they have a lovely interpretation walk all around the grounds as well, with some historical sections and bits about the geology and the vegetation. This is the third edition of our major book, I suppose, the Wildflowers of Southwest Australia. It's based on the western half of the Margaret River Shire, and was part of a project that I did with the WA Herbarium, doing a regional herbarium for this area, the Margaret River area. It's into its third edition, and very much a combined effort with my little bits of text and my friend Patricia, who's a wonderful artist doing the artwork. She has fun putting all the plants together for the end papers, and then through the book we basically go through the different families of plants that are found here, the different species, and talk a little bit about each one. The way we've set out the book is through the different families of plants, and we have the illustrations with a key and then the little descriptions of the plants. One thing I wanted to put in the descriptions was the names and the meanings of the names, which are often very interesting, and it actually helps you to remember names, I think, when you know what they mean. So we have a little section on that, and just very short descriptions. Here we've got the flags, so the yellow flag Patagonias and purple flags. This is a gorgeous little plant which grows in swamps, very difficult to see until you get your eye down at that level, but very pretty. Xeris, which are not so commonly known, but there's a lot of in the wetlands all around the south. And this is the morning iris, one of two in the area, which is on the southern part of the area. Here we've got some of the sundews or drosseras that live in the area. Not all found in wet areas, which you might expect, but some in just a very dry, sandy parts of the ridge. They are, of course, carnivorous plants, so on the leaves they have these little sticky tentacles all around, which trap insects, and they ingest those, and from the insects they get more nutritional minerals, because the soils of the area are generally in Western Australia are very, very poor, and we have about 150 or probably more now different sundews, different drosseras, which is a tremendous amount. They've diverged over time, and each has its own little niche and life form. Some are climbers, some are just very tiny rosettes on the ground, but they all eat insects, which is fascinating. Down here there's a little utricularia, a little bladderwort, which also traps insects by having tiny bladders attached to its roots, and there's a little trapdoor which little swimming tiny minute insects get trapped in there, and then it eats the insects, dissolves them in the fluid and absorbs their nutrients. Some of the pea flowers on this page, and we've got about 10 pages of pea flowers. They're one of the biggest families in Western Australia, but some are very common throughout the southwest. Some are found in particular areas. And this little one, Bossia disticha, is only found on the Capes area in the forested southern part of the region, and it is found mainly in the Boranup forest, but there are other outliers a little bit further north. But it's very, very common in the forest as an understory bush, but it's only found in this tiny area, mainly south of Margaret River and west of Caves Road, which makes it very interesting. And we have quite a few endemic plants. Quite a few of the orchids are only found in very specific locations just in this part of the world, which makes the whole area fascinating. Find That Flower is one of our smaller books based on photographs of the different plants that grow mainly on the Cape to Cape track, but in surrounding area as well.
Is that Cape Lewin Lighthouse in the background there?
This is Cape Lewin Lighthouse, yes. Again, focusing on what is here. This is October when the flowers are at their best in this area, and a nice mix of the different plants. So we've just got our map again of the Cape to Cape track and the area. And what we've done here, because people who don't know a lot about wildflowers, the thing that they see them quickest is, the first thing they see is the colour. So we've actually arranged all the plants by colour.
So you've got the colour on the edge
so
there.
We've got the colour as actually shown on the edge of the page. So we start off with the browns and greens, go through white, yellow, and then through to the reds, pinks, and through to the blues.
What do you generally have in your description of each?
In the descriptions we've just got the names and just a little tiny bit. I've tried to include some anecdotal bits as well about where the plants are found or any particular interesting points, and their flowering time, and that's it really. There's not a lot of room to put too much, but generally people just want to be able to identify the plant as much as they can and just know a little bit about it.
It seems also that you focused on making sure these photographs are quite large. You can see the details of the plants. I've noticed in some plant identification book it's quite difficult to see the plant in the photo.
We do try that to focus on the main part of the plant. With the orchids, of course, it's all very small. Where we've got some like this, we try to include the whole plant as well as the flower itself. There's another one here, the other way around, and try to show you how the plant fits into the landscape. This is up at Sugarloaf Rock here, again focusing on the Cape to Cape track, but of course a lot of the plants that we've got in this book are found all over the southwest, or in particular habitats in the southwest. Some of these are in the along the coast or in the forest, swamplands. That's that little butterfly plant that is in the big book as well. There's some blue ones. And as much as we can going through the different colours. Of course, with some plants this is doesn't work so well because they're multicoloured, or they look a different colour as they age, but it gives a pretty good idea. We've also included some of the weeds along the Cape to Cape, along the in the area, and given them a pink background to the description just to identify them, because it's good for people to know which are the good plants that we have, the native plants, and which are the weeds. Here's one of those sundews again, and a beautiful pink orchid, the pink enamel orchid, which is really spectacular when it's flowering.
Fantastic book.
One of my little passions is the orchids in our area, because it's amazing. In this Capes area we have so many. This is one of the very common ones, but beautiful, the little cowslip orchid, Calladenia flava. Again, the Capes area, and we took, for this book, we took a line which is actually the Gladstones line, which is the line that designates the Margaret River wine region, just as an arbitrary eastern boundary. And within this area, I think in the book we've got about 120 plus different orchids, and there will be more that I haven't been able to photograph yet, but it's a pretty good number. Again, there's so many different types. Some are common all through the southwest, some are just restricted to particular areas. These ones, and these are two different subspecies. They look very similar, but they are different. This one only grows in the Augusta area and has only been found a few times. And some of the red and green spider orchids, and then one of the little pink fairy orchids, pink fans. Helmet orchids, which are tiny little orchids with lovely circular leaves growing en masse in the forest floor under the trees. Difficult to find their flowers because they really are minute, only a few millimetres across, but when you do find them they're really interesting to look at. Donkey orchids, different sorts. And the flying ducks, which is one a lot of people know.
Wow, that's amazing.
Again, it looks big but on the photograph, but it's actually very small, about yay big. And going through to the different leek orchids, So many different types. Some only flower after a hot fire, like this one.
Wow. Wow.
And the sun orchids. Whoops, where are they? Here we are. Going through to some of the sun orchids. This is quite a tall one, quite easy to find. This one is very, very small, and you have to be very, very lucky to find that one. It's so beautiful. This is the coastal or broad-lipped spider orchid. It's the Caladinia aplanata, and it's actually a typical orchid along our coast, grows in the coastal heath, and you'll notice it's got some thickenings on the end of the petals and sepals, just the petals I think, and these are actually glands which emit pheromones which attract the insect, the particular insect that pollinates this orchid. And different orchids are pollinated by different, very specific insects often. Not all the time. Different orchids are pollinated in different ways, but mainly it's insects, and a lot of them have a very specific one.
I've seen photos at times of how the insects see the plant.
Yeah.
Do you know how the insects see this?
Well, they see different colours, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not just with the orchids, but all the insects tend to see blues and whites, and often flowers have a line or spots of lines leading into the centre of the plant.
That become visible once you can actually see it.
Yes, because a lot of them are actually ultraviolet, which the insects see better than plants. Whereas the red and yellow plants, some of the big flowers that you see, are pollinated by birds or even small mammals. There's quite a lot of that in Western Australia.
So this didn't evolve, obviously, to attract us. The way we're seeing it is really irrelevant to the plant.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, here we've got the lines of these little calyx going into the centre of the plant, and what happens, an insect lands on this lip, the labellum, and as it goes into the centre of the plant, it's on a hinge, and it hinges back, and so that the insect is drawn to and touches the back here where the pollen grains are in a cluster that's sticky, sticks on the insect's back, which then flies onto another plant and deposits it on the stigma, and the plant is pollinated. This is one of our hammer orchids, Drakeas, and this particular one is threatened, Flora. It's only found in a smallish area of the southwest, and just not very many of them. The structure of these plants are so weird. The labellum, the lip, has evolved to look like an insect, and it attracts, probably with the pheromones again, attracts a wasp that pollinates it, thinks it's a female, grabs it and tries to fly away, but of course because there's a hinge here on the labellum, it actually gets swung over and thrown against the column here, which has the pollen, which is sticky and attaches to the wasp, which then is able to fly off and try it again on another plant.